My friends, as we gather in this moment, let us turn our attention to a truth so familiar that its very familiarity has concealed it from us. We have all heard the words of the Master, "Seek first the kingdom of God," and yet, for many sincere seekers, this simple instruction has become the beginning of a long spiritual journey filled with effort, struggle, and longing. You have sought with intensity, with devotion, with tears, and with yearning, yet the kingdom has often seemed as distant as ever. The reason is not that the kingdom is far away, nor that you have failed in your seeking, but that the true meaning of this instruction has been hidden beneath centuries of misunderstanding. When Jesus spoke of seeking, he did not send you outward into the world of activity, nor inward into the realm of mental striving. He pointed you toward a reality already present, already functioning, already complete within your own consciousness. The kingdom of God is not something to be achieved. It is something to be recognized. And so as we begin our time together today, let us set aside the belief that we are trying to reach something that lies beyond us. Let us approach this teaching with the quiet awareness that what we are seeking is already here, awaiting only our recognition. In this hour, I invite you not to strive, not to attempt, but simply to rest in the possibility that the kingdom is far nearer than you have ever imagined, nearer than breath, nearer than thought, as close as your own being. As we move deeper into this subject, let us consider how the simple word seek has been subtly transformed in human consciousness into something the Master never intended. Over the centuries, seeking has come to mean striving, laboring, reaching outward, and attempting through personal effort to attain something we imagine ourselves lacking. And so, when we are told to seek first the kingdom, we instinctively begin a journey of activity, prayer as effort, meditation as discipline, devotion as duty, all arising from the hidden belief that God is somewhere else and that we must somehow reach him. Yet this very impulse reveals the core misunderstanding. All striving implies distance, and distance implies separation. And separation, my friends, is the original spiritual error. It is the belief that God is there and we are here, that the kingdom is a reward to be earned or a destination to be reached. But the moment we accept separation, even unconsciously, our seeking becomes restless and our prayer becomes anxious. We find ourselves pleading with a God we believe to be outside our own being, hoping for signs, waiting for answers, searching for experiences, all the while reinforcing the very sense of separation we are longing to overcome. The Master did not intend this. Seeking, in his language, was never a call to pursue God as one pursues a distant objective. It was an invitation to turn away from external dependence and inward mental struggle, and to rest in the awareness that the presence we seek is already the life of our life, the soul of our soul, and the consciousness in which we dwell. The kingdom is not reached through striving. It is revealed in the moment we relinquish the attempt to find what has never been absent. Now let us turn to the heart of the Master's revelation, the truth that dissolves all confusion. The moment it is understood, the kingdom of God is within you. With these words, Jesus removed the kingdom from the realm of time, from the realm of conditions, from the realm of outer attainment, and placed it where it has always been, within the consciousness of every individual. This kingdom is not a distant place, not a celestial domain reserved for the worthy, not a future reward for good behavior or correct belief. It is a spiritual reality, fully present, fully complete, and eternally functioning within the depth of your own being. When Goldsmith speaks of God as consciousness, he is reminding us that the presence we call God does not dwell in the sky, nor in temples made with hands, nor in the shifting conditions of human experience. God is realized only as we awaken to the truth that our very consciousness, when freed of fear, freed of desire, freed of the belief in separation, is the transparency through which the kingdom reveals itself. This kingdom is not something you feel or see with the senses. It is not emotional uplift or mystical excitement. It is that quiet, inner assurance that nothing stands between you and the infinite, that nothing is absent from this moment, that nothing needs to be added to your being for you to be complete. You do not journey toward the kingdom, nor do you invite it to come to you. Rather, you let the false sense of self dissolve, and in the silence that remains, the kingdom shines forth of its own accord. You do not enter the kingdom enters your awareness the moment you cease looking for it outside yourself. As we proceed, let us gently examine why, if the kingdom is already present within us, it so often remains hidden from our experience. The kingdom is never absent, yet our awareness of it is veiled by the incessant activity of the human mind. The mind, left to itself, is a restless instrument, constantly interpreting, evaluating, anticipating, fearing, desiring. This mental noise forms a cloud so dense that it obscures the quiet presence that has been with us all along. It is not that God is silent, it is that human thinking is too loud, and so long as we allow the mind to race from one concern to another, from yesterday's regrets to tomorrow's anxieties, we remain deaf to the still small voice that whispers, "I am here." Personal desire, too, becomes a barrier. The moment we approach God with a wish, a request, or an intention based on human need, we anchor our consciousness in the very belief that something is missing. Desire announces lack. It affirms separation. It insists that the kingdom is not yet complete. And fear, perhaps the deepest obstruction of all, is the conviction, often unspoken, often unnoticed, that we stand apart from the infinite. Fear is nothing more than the subconscious belief that we live alone, unsupported, vulnerable to forces beyond our control. But the truth is that no individual has ever been separated from the presence that maintains and sustains life. Thus, it is not the kingdom that is hidden. It is our own mental agitation that blinds us. When the mind quiets, even for a moment, the veil lifts, and we discover that the kingdom was never withheld. It was only overshadowed by the noise of a self we thought we were. Let us now move into the turning point of the entire spiritual journey, the moment where the path ceases to be a path at all and becomes a recognition. For centuries, humanity has sought God as though God were an object to be attained, a presence to be summoned, a power to be persuaded. We have sought God with intensity, with longing, with devotion, but always with the subtle implication that God is somewhere outside our present awareness. Yet the Master's teaching, and Goldsmith's continual reminder, is that God cannot be found through seeking, for seeking assumes absence. We cannot discover God by reaching outward, nor by tightening the mind in an effort to grasp spiritual truth. The kingdom is not attained by pursuit, it is revealed by recognition. And so the great shift occurs when we abandon the posture of a seeker and assume the posture of one who is simply aware. When the mind stops struggling to achieve a spiritual state, when it releases its attempts to find God or reach God, a quiet space opens within us, a receptivity in which divine presence makes itself known. This is the meaning of those profound words, "Be still and know, not be still and hope, not be still and believe, but be still and know. Knowing is not effort, it is awareness. It is the silent recognition that God is the life that lives you, the breath that animates you, the consciousness in which you exist. In this recognition, you discover that the one you have been seeking has never been separate from your own being. Seeking God dissolves into knowing God, and knowing God dissolves the illusion of a self apart from God. Here begins the true spiritual life, not in the attempt to reach the infinite, but in realizing the infinite is already here, awaiting only your recognition. And now, my friends, let us turn to what may be called practice, not in the sense of a technique to master or a discipline to perfect, but as a way of allowing the kingdom to reveal itself in our awareness. You see, the kingdom does not come through effort, nor does it respond to intellectual analysis. It is not reached by affirmations, nor by repetition, nor by the attempt to condition the mind to believe certain truths. The kingdom comes into view only when the mind grows quiet enough for the truth that already is to be heard. This is why Goldsmith speaks of resting in the word. Resting means we cease trying to make truth act, and instead we allow truth to act upon us. We take a simple spiritual principle not to convince ourselves, not to claim anything, but to lift consciousness above the din of human thought. We sit in the awareness of a truth such as, the kingdom of God is within me, or we abide in the simplicity of, I and the Father are one, not repeating it, not forcing belief, but letting the words settle like a stone dropped into still water. There is no effort here, no straining for experience, no anticipation. We are not waiting for a sign. We are not hoping for a feeling. We are simply opening the inner ear to the presence already functioning as our very being. As the mind grows quiet, something subtle occurs. We sense, without any outward evidence, that we are not alone, that we are not separate, that the presence we call God is nearer than breath. And in that quiet recognition, the kingdom begins to disclose itself not as a mystical event, not as an emotional high, but as a deep, steady, interior assurance. This is entering the kingdom, not through effort, but through receptivity, not by trying to reach God, but by being still long enough to discover that God has never once withdrawn from us. As we continue, it is important to understand that the recognition of the kingdom does not suddenly remake the outer world through dramatic signs or spectacular changes. Rather, it quietly transforms the one who beholds it. When the kingdom is recognized, the first change is not in circumstances, but in consciousness. The anxieties that once drove us lose their claim over our attention. The pressures we once felt so heavily begin to dissolve, not because conditions have altered, but because the sense of a separate self struggling to manage life no longer dominates our awareness. You begin to notice that fear loosens its grip, not through resistance, but through the realization that the presence within you is greater than whatever appears before you. Relationships soften because you are no longer approaching others from a place of need or defense. Decisions become clearer, not through intellectual effort, but through the quiet intuition that arises when the mind is receptive to divine guidance. This is not positive thinking, nor is it an attempt to manifest a better experience. It is simply the natural outpouring of spiritual awareness. Goldsmith reminds us that we do not seek these outer improvements. They come as the shadow, the byproduct of an awakened consciousness. When you recognize the kingdom within, health may unfold, not because you fought disease, but because you ceased identifying with fear. Supply may appear, not because you prayed for money, but because you shifted from a sense of lack to an awareness of completeness. Guidance arises, not because you demanded answers, but because you became still enough to hear what has always been speaking within. The kingdom does not change the world. It changes your vision of the world. And as your perception shifts, the world begins to reflect the harmony that was present in your consciousness all along. This is the quiet miracle of recognition. The kingdom reveals itself first, within, and then, almost unnoticed, its harmony expresses itself throughout every aspect of your life. Now, my friends, having seen something of what unfolds when the kingdom is recognized, we come to the question of daily living. How do we move through the ordinary activities of life, our work, our relationships, our responsibilities, while maintaining awareness of this inner presence? The answer is beautifully simple, though it requires sincerity. We return again and again to the realization that the kingdom goes before us, not as a mental affirmation, not as a protective shield, but as the truth that divine presence is the very activity of our being. Living in the kingdom means that we do not begin the day as isolated individuals hoping to find God along the way. Instead, we begin with the quiet recognition that wherever we are, God is, that whatever we face, the infinite is already present as wisdom, love, and intelligence. Throughout the day, we pause not to plead, not to question, but to remember, a moment of silence in the midst of work, a breath of recognition before a conversation, a quiet inner turning when confusion arises. These brief pauses are not techniques. They are openings, small windows, through which the light of the kingdom enters our awareness again and again, and with each remembrance, the sense of personal responsibility begins to dissolve. We act, but not as isolated egos. We speak, but not from fear or self-defense. We meet challenges, but not with the belief that the burden falls upon us alone. Goldsmith teaches that this is living by grace, allowing the divine to express itself through us. Rather than attempting to direct life through personal will, as this becomes our way of living, an inner steadiness develops, a quiet confidence that does not depend on circumstances. The outer world may fluctuate, yet within us there is a presence that remains constant. This steady recognition is the kingdom lived, not as an experience to seek, but as the atmosphere in which we walk, breathe, and exist. And now, as we bring our time together to a close, let us rest for a moment in the simplicity of what has been revealed. The kingdom of God, the very thing humanity has sought through prayer, ritual, striving, and longing, has never been distant, never withheld, never delayed. It has always been the silent foundation of your being, awaiting only the lifting of the veil created by fear, desire, and the belief in separation. You have not been journeying toward the kingdom. You have been awakening to it. Every moment of stillness, every surrender of mental effort, every quiet turning within has brought you nearer, not to some far-off realm, but to the recognition of what has been eternally present. And so, as you leave this time of contemplation, do not think of yourself as one who must maintain a spiritual state or achieve a spiritual goal. Simply remember that the presence you have touched here goes with you. Remember that the kingdom is not an attainment, but a revelation. Remember that God is not outside, but the very life that lives you. And as you remember, a deep peace will accompany you, not the peace of favorable conditions, but the peace born of knowing that nothing can separate you from the infinite that constitutes your being. Let this awareness walk with you into every moment of your day, until the truth becomes as natural as breathing. The kingdom you sought was never beyond you, it was within you from the beginning.